I had no school education. I was always I actually thought I was going to become a footballer because when I was young, I was very good at football. And so I ended up moving to London and working amongst the bar scene there, and I built my way up. And we went from 1,000 orders a month to like 1,000 orders a day. I have the intuition. I've been in the industry a long time.
Hi everyone, welcome to Startup and Scale Up People podcast, a place where you can learn about how people build their dreams, businesses, lives, and share experiences. I'm Mario Rivas, and now my focus is exec and board level community builder. Also, I have a business integration and automation a solution company. And yeah, please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Everyone forgets, around 70% of people forget to subscribe to the forecast. So please do it. It's going to help us to continue with the momentum. And today we are with James Weiss. He has been in a journey reshaping himself, or like a sort of evolution, personal evolution, because he was a bartender and then entrepreneur. He had one exit. He sold the business for 7 figures, and now he's an inventor, and he's building his new business. I know that he's like inventing something cool. Welcome, James.
Yeah, I love the word you used there, inventing something cool, because that's exactly what we're doing here. No, thank you, and thank you for having me on. And it's a pleasure to talk about how I turned from a bartender to inventing something that the biggest brands in the world couldn't even do.
Thank you. No, thank you for accepting as well, James. To set a little bit the conversation, you had a first business, right? You scale it, you sold it, and now you're inventing a product, and also you're like building your new startup. But let's start first with your first story, because I think it's quite interesting. You learn a lot. There are a lot of lessons learned there, mistakes that I've done as well in my past. So it's good to hear these stories. So you sold a business, right, in 7 figures, and I think I would like to know, or we would like to know, what was that business, right? What do you do, and how do you scale it?
Yeah, so I actually, and just going kind of further back than that, so I had no school education. I was always I actually thought I was going to become a footballer because when I was young, I was very good at football, and I actually ended up playing for Cardiff City, who are where I'm from. I'm from Swansea, so they're rivals. But at the time, Swansea was in the lower league, and Cardiff were in the championship. So I ended up playing there, and it didn't work out, and I never got further, didn't progress. And I was kind of left in limbo then, because I was like, okay, I have no education behind me. I didn't really go to college or university. What do I do? So I ended up doing what you would do when you've kind of not been drinking or partying, because you're a professional athlete. So I ended up going abroad, and that's when I started working behind the bar and having fun. And I realized actually I loved the showmanship of bartending and communicating with people and creating things. I think that's the big aspect, was creating, and the art of mixology. So being very competitive, I wanted to become the best mixologist in the world. So I ended up moving to London and working amongst the bar scene there, and I built my way up to then working at the Shard in London, where actually I had this idea, because a lot of people used to say to me, I'd love to make cocktails at home, and the at-home cocktail market was very, it hadn't been tapped into at that point. So people will, I'd love to make this martini at home. How do I do it? I can never get the ingredients right, etc. So that got me thinking, well, how about I create a brand where I deliver that moment to the consumer, solve that problem, and basically deliver ingredients to people's homes where they can create the amazing quality cocktails at home. So that was the point where I went home and told my partner that I just quit my job that I'd worked so hard to get, and I'm going to start this cocktail brand.
Where was that job?
That was the Shards. Yeah. So that was at the Shards. So and it was very early on, because they just offered me a very big role of head bartender there, which was kind of like, as big as it gets, because that was like where I was working towards, and it was good money at the time, and paying rent in London at the time was as it is today, incredibly expensive. but I decided to, and I don't advise that. I think if you're going to build something, and I think in hindsight, obviously it's worked out for me, but actually it definitely makes it much more challenging because I started this journey of building this brand and realized, yeah, this is incredibly tough because at the time we were there was no competitors in the market of delivering cocktails through the post. And we positioned ourselves as a premium luxury cocktail brand. Actually, to build that brand in the first 3 years was incredibly painful. I had to, so we couldn't afford to stay in London. And when I'm all in, I'm kind of all in. And sometimes that's probably not a great thing because at the time there was no income from this business. So we ended up moving back into my partner's in-laws, well, my in-laws, my partner's parents' house in their spare bedroom because I literally sacrificed everything to get this brand off the ground, and actually build momentum. Ended up actually having a child at that stage as well. And so we were technically, you could say we had no home. We were lodging with my partner's parents so I could pursue this dream because I really felt like I had something and I felt like the market was going to shift. And by way of luck, I suppose, but you create your own luck, you create your own opportunity. COVID happened and everyone wanted cocktails at home then. So that, to put in perspective, we were doing like, God, let's say about 1,000 orders a month at that point, which was enough to kind of be able to, keep my head slightly above the water. When COVID happened, we were kind of number one on Google. You just search cocktail delivery or cocktails by post and we would come up. We paid no ads, no ad spend, anything. It was just we were there because we were early. And it was delivered through the post box as well, which was perfect because there was no contact, the 2 meters, etc. And we went from 1,000 orders a month to like 1,000 orders a day. So it went from going to bed one night, waking up the next day and going, oh my God, what on earth has happened here? So that's when the scale up happened, I suppose. And that's when I realized that I'm going to need some external investment here to be able to scale this as fast and actually capture the moment because everyone's ordering cocktails and we had a chance here to build our brand, build off the momentum. And that leverages then more opportunities because we knew COVID wasn't going to last forever. It felt like it lasted forever. And then there was lockdown 2 and 3. And then after that, I realized if I got investment early, built the foundations, we can then push off and broaden the brand into different markets because at the time I had this idea of canned cocktails as well. As we came out of COVID, people would go out more and then we could focus on the RTD versions of our cocktails. So I actually had an exciting opportunity of investment and I kind of just looked at the capital introduced rather than the actual things you should look at, which was the legal stuff.
Did you get that capital from private equity or venture capital?
Yeah, private equity. So it was a bunch of individuals that put the capital in. Now me being, and I'm quite old school. So where I come from is very humble, council estate lad. So I take things face value. So if, you could spit in the hand, shake my hand and that's as good as a deal for me. But that's not how it works in business. So when I'd received the term sheet, I was like, okay, fine. Because, contracts are kind of one of those things that are just there, but really it should be a gentleman's agreement. And I suppose my loyalty and my values kind of didn't work out well for me in that respect because actually not taking any legal advice on really, it was just, I trusted this group of people. And I felt because I was over the 50%, this is kind of not really knowing the fundamentals of business because
sorry, you gave over 50% away?
No, so after dilution, I was still above the 51%. And I always used to think, and a lot of people used to say, the 51% rule is you'd have, you'd still have control over your business. But actually, obviously, you can rewrite the articles and the rules of the companies and the investment agreements to actually, really, you don't have control over the business because you still would need sign off on executive decisions.
Yeah, you have votes and stuff.
Yeah, so I was kind of washed away by this. And actually, when it came to going in this direction, I suppose, and using that momentum to push into doing other different types of stuff, I realized that it's probably not my business anymore.
When you say when you say washed away, did you stay in the business as a CEO, like progressing and scaling the business, but you felt that you were controlled and managed for someone else?
Exactly. So yeah, you felt like you weren't making the decisions. I wasn't making the decisions anymore. It was losing grip of control, and not control in a way where it's you want to control, like it's, you know, it's a control where you have to go a certain way or there's no other way, basically. So it was very difficult at that point to realize, and it took me time to realize that actually, um, I'm not steering the ship here anymore. I have to kind of, you know, do as I say, so to speak, which is a really tough position to be in, because bear in mind, you built this business from scratch. You know, you went through 3 years of no income, all by my choice, because I had this passion and you know, dream.
But what I mean, sometimes this happens, right? But I think which was the main problem here? They were taking bad decisions. They were, you know, like driving the company in a direction that you didn't want to. Or
Yeah,
which was
exactly that.
which was one of the main disagreement, I would say, between you and the investors.
So I think that at the time that the group that came in were pushing new product development in a field. I think businesses, so a lot of business groups or people think that I suppose success can be transferred into different categories. So for example, if you've had success in perhaps tech, and then you leave that and then you go into perhaps opening a restaurant, um, there's a certain aspect of where the investors thought that their skills were transferable and their ideas were transferable into the drinks industry when from the industry that they had success in. So where I would say propose this proposition, they would propose a totally different opposite proposition, and we would have to go with that proposition because the control was there for them to be able to do that and not for me to be able to go this way. So it was a clash of ideas and where we wanted the brand, how we wanted the brand to be perceived. I'm very ambitious, so I wanted to build a 100-year brand. That's kind of my dream. I wanted to build a legacy. And when I realized there's a ceiling now put in front of me, because the business was doing well, we had a lot of customers, we had a lot of return customers. I realized that actually, I don't think I'm going to be able to push this where I wanted to go, because we wanted to go to the US. I wanted to go. I'm very ambitious, and I think it was at that point where I was like, well, if it isn't going to go the direction I want it to go, then I feel like I don't have much more purpose in this business. So I made the hard decision to negotiate an exit, and they continue with the business and their ideas.
For how many years did you build this business, or you were running this business?
Yeah, so that was 2016. Exit was so 6 years. So it was 6 years. So yeah, 6 years.
It's a good time. Huh? It's a good time to. Yeah, you were lucky. You know, you could exit quite a good time. I would say 6 years is a good time.
Yeah, and after actually, so one thing I was bang, and this kind of now kind of leads into where I'm at present day. So one thing I was at the time was banging on about is the next best thing is going to be cocktails in cans, but in a premium way, not in a way where it tastes like you're drinking sugar. A way where luxury is tasted in that can, and this is where the major clash was. So I was
now there are many brands now. It's full the market
everywhere. So
you wanted to do it like like 4 or 5 years ago when no one was there, right?
Yeah, a long time. Yeah, exactly. But it's easy for me to say, oh, I predicted the cocktails in cans, but legitimately, like one of the biggest issues was this is where I saw the brand elevate. The evolution of the brand was to be in the retail environment. You see us in Waitrose, etc. And at the time, we had those options available to us, but it wasn't liked for some reason. And I felt like, well, if I know the industry, I have the intuition, I've been in the industry a long time. If I'm not getting back, then what's the point? So anyway, I took the exit, and I couldn't do anything in cocktails, obviously, because there was a release clause, and I had to make sure that I weren't competing with the brand.
Also for canned cocktails.
Yeah. Yeah, so anything, so yeah, anything to
And
do.
did they actually started doing that part, that vertical in the business?
No,
Did
no,
they?
they
No.
didn't, which ultimately led to its downfall. And I know, yeah, the business didn't. I mean, I know as of today, yeah, I don't think the business is actually trading anymore. So yeah,
After the
it
business
was.
died after you left.
Yeah, I believe so, without kind of being definite about it. But I believe the business, yeah, it didn't, I think it didn't really do too well once I came out of the picture. And I think that my predictions kind of came right. The canning cocktails market went crazy after COVID. And I suppose the hard part is as well, when you're running a company and you clashing with ideas, you kind of think, am I wrong? Or, because it's either I'm wrong or you're wrong. And you do have an element of self-doubt thinking, well, actually, if I'm wrong, then, you know, what am I doing here? So when I took exit and I realized that my intuition was correct and that's where the market was evolving, I believed that, okay, I was right, and not in an egotistical way. Like, I fully believed that direction was the direction we should have took, and it worked out. It would have been successful for us, and it would have made sure the company continued to grow. Because the company didn't go that way, I believe that was its downfall. But anyway, I had now new, I suppose, under what I'd been through in those 6 years and how I started with nothing and honestly nothing. It was like my last paycheck from my job was all the capital to start my first business, which was outrageously low to kickstart something brand new. And all those learnings, and especially the legal stuff, and there's a lot obviously I cannot talk about because of how it ended there. And that gave me the foundation to do what I'm doing today. I fully believe that taught me a lot more than what the monetary value of it was. Because now having that idea about cans also struck this idea of, well, because I can't look at the liquid anymore, or at least for a period of time, what about I look at the packaging? And that then allowed me to look at the packaging. Sorry, I'm a bit like Brewdog here with a dog. So I
No,
have a little
it's
Labrador.
good.
I have a Labrador, and yeah, he's a co-inventor.
It's amazing. Actually, just to say to the audience that the background is real. James, can you show a little bit the background?
Yeah, so the backgrounds, usually there's some sheep here and lambs, but they've gone over. But it's lambing season, so I mean, I'm Welsh, so who wouldn't love a background full of sheep, especially a Welshman?
It looks like like paradise. It's amazing. I mean, I
Yeah,
live in
so
London Bridge, the city center, and I grew up very close to the countryside in Chile. So I was in the
nice.
mountain, the countryside all my life. I was a Boy Scout, so I very like nature a lot. And when I saw the
Yeah.
background, I was like impressed. Oh my God, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's fully real. I picked the best, yeah, the best background that's real.
Or the best location in your house to
Yeah,
build
yeah.
your garage to invent what is coming.
Yes, exactly. So this room is actually where all my ideas are conceived and where I bring things, I suppose, out of thin air. So kind of going back to that thought of cans and looking at the packaging, one thing I really got frustrated by when I suppose I was exploring the packaging and cans, etc., was that they go warm. Like aluminium's a great conductor, but sometimes in the wrong way. So when you take a canned cocktail, for example, you're going to go with it from X to Y. And yeah, in between that process of moving, that can is going to warm up and you can't stop it unless you've prepared, got an ice box or chiller, etc. But how can you, so if you're on a beach, and you're impulsive and you just buy a beer and from a fridge and you walk down and then you drink it. Sadly, you're not gonna have a cold beer for much longer. Whereas also all the energy that's gone into chilling that beverage for it then just to lose it in. We did research, and I spent last summer in Austin, Texas, which was quite a shock to a Welshman. That heat was incredible, and we did tests on, taking a can from a fridge, walking with it, having a few sips. Within 5 minutes, it had creeped above a temperature of about 15 degrees Celsius, which is kind of below there is classed as kind of cool, and then below 9 is classed as cold. But anyway, this is where the idea of the cool can came from. And I looked and researched heavy with all the knowledge of business, and quite early brought in some legal advice as well.
So James, just for context, you saw your business, you cannot work, with a liquid anymore. So you thought, okay, I'm going to look at the package, which is the
Yeah.
main problem that the industry today have, right? The industry has, we have this problem that the cans get very warm. So you are inventing something to cool down the liquid basically inside of the can, right?
Yes. Sorry. If,
Is this a device or what is it? How is which is the idea? Because you have some
yeah. So
prototypes, I hear.
Yeah, so when I actually similar case to when I first started my first business. So when I kind of realized that retirement, well, I mean, it wasn't a substantial package, but when I realized I can't just sit here and not do anything, and I have a mind that needs to be functioning and needs to be challenged. And for me, it's legacy and mission. I have kids now, so I wanted to build something that changes the world, right? So when I tell people around me that, oh, I'm going to just go all in now and start inventing a self-cooling can that, the Coca-Colas of the world have tried, the Heinekens, the Carlsberg, they've all tried and they've all attempted to create such a thing. And it was deemed, one of the major it could be one of the biggest innovations in the can industry if it was successful. But previous attempts never quite got there, and I had to investigate and understand first why those attempts failed. And a lot of the attempts were using gas as a way of, so they would release the gas and then the chamber would cool down through that release and then absorb the temperature from the surrounding liquid in amongst the can. But actually they were using gases that are not environmentally friendly, like refrigerating gases and liquids, etc., and refrigerants, and they were non-starter. They're really expensive as well. So like you're talking 20x a normal can, which is just not feasible for customers. So I was like, okay, great. This failed many times over. I'm all in. I love this because I want to understand, how I can achieve this in a different way. So I looked at the chemistry, and I am not a chemist. I have no. I don't think I meant one or two science lessons in school, and that was about it. So, but luckily in this day and age, you can find anything, especially with AI. And researching papers and toxicology reports, etc. I found a component that was already regulated and already used in everyday life. I honed in on that component and then realized that from a patent and IP perspective, that this one was kind of missed and not utilized as a way, probably because it's not as inefficient as the other components, but the other components and me having my commercial brain on, I realized there's no chance. Like they're either explosive or they're non-environmentally friendly, and everyone is looking at the green aspect these days, and rightly so. So we found this component and then we engineered the component, and then I brought in scientists because I realized there's a level you can get to, and then to get to the next level, you need to tap into those minds. So we brought in some PhD scientists, that brought in some engineers, and yeah, we then came up with a chemical ratio and component that's non-toxic, environmentally friendly, cost efficient. There was like 4 or 5 pillars that I had to tick before I could even announce this thing. And then I announced to the world that this Welshman has created the world's first self-cooling can, and it went crazy. Really, it ended up speaking to every single tier 1 brand in the world. I got invited to Coca-Cola's R&D facility in Atlanta, and spent some time with them, and it was just kind of like, this is crazy, like I'm here with the biggest brands in the world.
And James, it's quite scary at the same time because you're talking with the biggest one. You already, you were like a watch away, as you said, from your previous business, right? And now you are building something which is going to be unique, high value. It's going to be massive scale, right, around the globe. It's going to be a multi-billion business. And now, how are you managing all the IP? How are you managing all the legal stuff so you can protect yourself in your invention? How are you doing that? Because you're talking with the best brand around the globe. They tried many times. They failed. And how are you protecting yourself? And why you think that they are not going to try it? So they are going to let you do it for them and do a great partnership.
Yeah, so And that's a great question because, sitting amongst the Coca-Colas of the world, you realize that you have zero chance. If they want to take it, they will take it. But I suppose it's when you're innovating, it's good to be paranoid and make sure and always think about ways that it can be recreated. And and engage with patent attorneys very, very early on. So everything I did, and there was a point where, and this was the kind of point where we realized that, we've protected everything. I even brought in can experts and can engineers to reverse engineer exactly how these guys would think when they see the patents and see what we've done. And then we would put those into the patent, and we went well beyond can as a container. We went, bottles, wine bottles, cups. You think of it, and we patented it basically. And then we split the patents up. So you have the kind of patents based around the manufacturing of the devices, then you have the kind of structural patents, and then you have the chemistry patents as well. So before by the time I'd announced this version to the press and we did a big PR campaign, I went on Sky News and it all got a bit crazy. We had people in America saying, I just heard you on the radio, and I'm like, oh my God. And then we'd have like Japanese news saying this breakthrough of beers will no longer be warm. It was incredible. But yeah, making sure before that point we had, did everything possible, even, taking out insurance to defend if anyone tried, because the patent's only as good as you enforcing it.
With who were you working on the IP, with the legal stuff? I'm saying this because I had a dinner last week or 2 weeks ago with Alex Watt.
Yes, yeah.
And we had dinner, but I had a lunch with him as well to talk a little bit about the community, how to do some partnerships. We want to run some events in London. So yeah, just say their names. I think they're going to be happy to,
Absolutely. Alex Watt has been a fundamental part of the IP and keeping me focused on protecting everything and Howard Kennedy themselves. So we had patent attorneys, which was Barker Patel. They actually, the reason why I wanted them as well is they had a successful patent filed for a self-cooling can in a different version with gas a long time ago. They were one of the first to get a successful patent for this type of thing. So I went to them purposely because they know how to get successful patents for one in this field, but they also will be able to, they helped me understand all the different patents that had been filed and attempted and versions that had been attempted, and then finding that area where it hadn't been explored. And then Alex has been super helpful, from very early on, even to the point where, I went to see Alex one time at Howard Kennedy and I took him one of the first ever prototypes and he'd felt it. And then I said to him, yeah, so I'm going now to Denmark to visit Carlsberg. And he was like, right, before, have you done X, Y, Z? Make sure you do this, make sure you do that. Don't show them, don't leave any samples behind. Take everything with you and make sure let me see the NDAs, etc. Make sure they're robust. There's no reverse engineering. So taking on one thing I would do and say to any other founder is you can't, I know getting lawyers can feel expensive, but honestly the cost of it cost me, I believe, in the millions, millions and millions for not getting the right legal paperwork and legal advice in my first venture. I could have got a lot more if I had more leverage on what I'd signed. Now, having lawyers from the very start, I've got full ownership of Delta Innovations. The IP is very, very robust and well protected, and to the point now where we're also protecting other fields like medical industries and personal applications, giving me that confidence to be able to speak to these biggest brands in the world. And look, you're always going to be paranoid because you're still a startup and these companies have multi-billion, even just the manufacturing can industry guys as well. Like I went to Denver to Ball, who are the biggest manufacturer of cans in the world. And I showed them this, and it's always that feeling of you're exposing yourself, but you've got to really put it, know it's been worked on robustly.
And James, small question. Why did you visit all these guys? Because in the end, if you produce the product and then you want to sell it to them, right?
Yeah, so we looked at the licensing model initially. So we thought we've got something here. we could license the can manufacturer, and the can manufacturers are all plugged into the soda and beer and XY. So we realized that that was the obvious approach. And then one thing that we then also realized is that approach is going to take us about 5 years to bring this to market. And I didn't like that timeline. Also, a lot of capital is going to be needed to be introduced, and that's a lot of fundraising. So we quite quickly pushed that to the kind of back of the queue in terms of the approach, the commercial approach, because that was the reason for going to bowlers. Do you want to license this technology? And evaluated it, etc. And we always did what, the due diligence was always good for us, because we'd worked so hard on making sure that we'd got the chemistry. So UK and EU REACH approved the component we're using for the way we're using it. We got recyclability status by all the recyclability bodies, and everything was ticked off. The only thing we didn't have is that mass manufacturer, because this isn't a product that you're just going to sell and it's going to sell 10, 20 of, or 100,000, 200,000. It's going to be millions and millions and millions, and if not billions. So you have to make sure those foundations are started. So that's where the licensing approach was the obvious one. When that didn't work out, we then looked at creating the process ourselves, because actually converting the can to a cool can was quite simple. We designed it to make it very, very easy. And we could have sold it to the filling lines. So, for example, if Coca-Cola are bringing in, 20 million cans, they could convert those 20 million cans to cool cans, then fill them, seam them, and then hit the market. So we ended up talking then directly to the brands to see if that was something. And again, there was like a 2-3 year timeline pot there. And I just kept, not liking the timelines, because I every time they have to think, then it's a year basically. So you make them think a few times, then you're looking at 2-3 years before this product even sees a shelf. So now we're working. So me just, not kind of accepting that corporate kind of slow-winded approach. We're now working on a model where actually we will sell the product. So we're going to sell the cool can direct to consumer, but not in the way that it's been put in the press. It's going to be a way where the cool can is going to be reusable. So you buy the can once and you can reuse it again and again and again through so think Nespresso. So we'll be launching Cool Pods, which is a pod that will make anything go cold instantly. All again sustainable and green. And actually we did a lot of research on the energy take up of refrigerations, etc., and how ice is created. And actually from a carbon perspective and CO2e, we worked out that we could save 60,000 tons of CO2e if we sold 10 million cool cans alone. Never mind all the other kind of products that we have in the pipeline in different verticals, etc. So it has a massive green aspect to it, which, look, that's the lucky part of it. Like, I only wanted to create a cold drink on demand. But then as you evolve and you explore further into technologies and markets and understanding the product more, you realize that 10% of global electricity is towards cooling, and cooling things down. It's an infrastructure that's static. So we are basically reinventing cool, and it's going to be a crazy journey, and it's very, very bullish. But I think it's possible.
And I heard what I remember when we were at that dinner together. Remember you mentioned that you can get, decrease the temperature in 90 seconds?
Yeah. So 90 seconds. So basically you push the button and in 90 seconds, a warm beer will be a cold beer. And also
when you say cold beer, how many degrees?
Yeah. So we are looking at it actually we've looked at it from more of a temperature, so delta T, which is temperature drop. So if you're on the beach and it's very hot, like 30 degrees, your body is also going to be very, very hot, and your perception of temperature is going to be different. 15-degree drop will actually, when you drink it, it will feel cold. So even though the end temperature isn't deemed cold, the environment you're drinking that beverage is, and the temperature that you are at and the outside atmosphere is at, will deem that 15-degree drop very cold.
15 degrees?
Yeah. But then with the pods, if you really wanted it to get it like down to 2-3 degrees, it's still possible because that's where the pods kind of come in. So those pods will allow you can actually, a bit like a coffee. So if you wanted a single espresso, you just stick a pod in and you have a single espresso. If you want a double espresso, you have another, you put another pod in. Similar to that. So if you want it ice cold, so we cool it down by 15 degrees. Each time you put a pod in, it will cool down. There is a limit, so you couldn't get it to like -10 and it becomes a slush puppy. The limit
This is
is
gonna be
about
a frappe beer, right?
yeah, exactly. You don't it's and then it's kind of no better than when you put the beer in a freezer and you wait and it turns and then you wait too long and it turns to like a slush and you kill the beer. But yeah, like so really in any environment it's possible to get your beer down to 5-6 degrees. It's just whether you feel like you need to because actually your body temperature and everything is going to be increased and that's
And
refreshing.
when do you think that this is gonna be ready to be released?
So what we're doing now is we're building it out of Silicon Valley, and that seems crazy and expensive. But actually, we looked at different manufacturers across the world, and we also leveraged the brands and the people we're speaking to. And look, these brands have been very, very helpful. Like everyone has been really supportive. And I thought we may be like, who are these guys? You know, they're young and they have this crazy ambition, but actually the industry has been very accepting, especially like the can industry and the biggest brands in the world have all been supportive. And that we've leveraged circles and we found a company in Silicon Valley, and it was set up by the guy who helped Steve Jobs when he left Apple or got ousted at Apple the first time. Probably a bit of a similar scenario there. And we went and created something else. And in between, that venture of the second stint at Apple, he met this guy who is the founder of Acorn, which is the company we're now building this product with in Silicon Valley. And they're basically building a product for one, to be consumer friendly in terms of the price point, because one thing, I'm being a humble guy myself, like I don't want this to be expensive to the consumer. I want it to be something that really does problem solve and doesn't feel like, you know, it's too costly. So we're kind of fine tuning the engineering to make it cost effective, but also performance effective too and scale effective. So we're looking at this being probably around August, September. We'll launch this year.
Oh, nice! It's coming
Yeah.
soon, mate.
So it's coming
Exciting.
soon. So maybe we'll have to do this again and I'll show you because actually the product is not being seen yet. We can show you what it's like. Because actually it's gonna be a can of the future. Like it's gonna look like so Elon Musk, love or hate him, and obviously you've got Elon Musk the businessman, Elon Musk political. I'm talking Elon Musk the businessman here. He always states that, you know, we're living in the future, so why not make things look like the future? Because when you think about, you know, futuristic movies, etc., and one of my favorite movies is Tron, and I love the LED light aspect to it. So there's a little kind of sneak, I suppose, drop of what we're doing. We're actually, the can is going to have some element where it lights up on activation, and it's not going to be expensive. I promise you that.
Oh, that sounds exciting. I'm so happy, mate, having a nice beer in Greece, right on the beach,
Yeah,
and also on the
yeah, yeah,
Mediterranean, right? Nice. Also in Chile, I'm from Chile, it's very warm. But if you
yeah.
want to, when you want to
Southern,
explore
yeah.
you can let me know. I have contacts in Chile as well, and different countries in South America.
That's the part of the world that we will focus on.
Yeah, I
So
have.
in the UK, the thing is, like, it's basically a fridge outside most of the time in the UK, isn't it? So it's unless it gets peak summer in the UK, the kind of product is a little bit redundant. But in, like you say, in South America and Central, and it's
Colombia,
perfect.
Brazil, also in Chile in summer, you know, we have 40 degrees. It's like in Chile, every single building has a swimming pool, you know, at the rooftop. It's normal. It's normal because
Yeah,
it's so hot that, yeah, you
you
have
need
to
to
have a
cool
swimming
down.
pool. Yeah, and in every single neighborhood, even if you are middle class, high class, yeah, like all the new buildings basically come, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
with a swimming.
No, that for us is a big market. It's massively where we would focus on
Yeah,
this product.
amazing. And well, we are like ending the episode. We are getting to the end. James, it's been nice to hear your story. Of course, we have to have a second episode, you know, by the end of the year, so to know how is the business going, how many, you know, thousands of, you know, this product have sold so far. And in terms of fundraising, are you doing fundraising? Do you raise already, or are you
Yeah,
Are you
so
funding this by yourself? How are you going
so
to
I
manage that?
Yeah, so I started the funding myself because I wanted to eliminate risk before I took any external capital. And actually, we've not took any institutional capital. We've just took direct investment from angels and high net worth individuals. And I leveraged a few people in my circle to, because I always have had a good group of people back in Wales who I've always wanted to support financially, and they're always eager to like, when's your next venture come in? When's it come in? And I was telling them I'm working on something, but I want to eliminate the risk first because obviously if someone like Coke had a robust patent that is exactly the same as what we wanted to do, then it's a non-starter. Um, and at least I've wasted my own money, not anyone else's money. Whereas now we have eliminated all the risk, and there's always a risk, but in terms of risk and elimination, we've got it down to as far as we can in terms of the risk factor. And yeah, we're still kind of angel and crowdfunding, non-institutional, and we're trying our best to get it to market in a non-institutional way, because I feel like that adds to that story of it doesn't need to be ridiculous. You don't need to throw a ridiculous amount of money at things sometimes. If the product's good enough, people will buy into it, and that's also the manufacturers as well. Like they will take and swallow some initial costs to drive it to market because the upside is there for everyone then. So yeah, we're very much semi-bootstrapped, I would say, if that's a phrase.
James, can you share a few lessons learned?
Definitely legal advice. Get the right people around you. Also, I do believe your circle is your net worth. Like you need to have a really good, close circle and an ambitious circle, a circle that's going to push you. And also, do some networking for you as well. Because when you're networking, it's great to network for yourself, but when you get people talking, you have peers talking about your product and doing some networking for you and introductions for you. That's massive. That's how we've been able to fundraise in an efficient way as well, is investors meeting other investors going, oh, you need to jump on this product. Having a really good partner. So my partner has been a backbone to everything, and she's believed in everything. I think that I couldn't have done anything without her. So she always deserves a special mention in this story. And when one day I write my book, she'll have a whole chapter dedicated to her.
For sure. So much patience, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's me rocking into, when I realized the chemistry worked, I think it was like 2 a.m. in the morning because I forgot time. And I'd rock in and go, I found the chemistry, and she's like, oh my god, do you realize it's 2 a.m. Yeah, so she's had some resilience as well. But just believe in yourself is always. I know it's a simple kind of metaphor, but believing in yourself, and if you are in the market and you understand the market, believe in your intuition, because it's probably right, and gut instinct is always right.
Amazing. Thank you, James, for your time, for the episode, your knowledge and experience. And yeah, looking forward to talk to you. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching the video, and I will see you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.